The irony was cruel. David's fury had been unmistakable during the will reading his accusations, his venom all directed at me. Yet beneath it all, I sensed a desperation, a need to understand why his mother had chosen this path. After the meeting, I walked the streets of Cheyenne, letting the cool spring air clear my head. The city was waking up, shops opening, coffee brewing, neighbors chatting over fences. Life continued indifferent to the turmoil inside me. My phone buzzed with messages from old friends and coworkers offering condolences and curious questions. Most wanted to know if I was okay, but some hinted at the gossip already swirling about the will. I wasn't sure how to feel. Angry, grateful, lost. All at once. That evening, I found myself sitting on my small porch, the sun dipping behind the rolling hills. Ellen Parker was tending her garden next door, waving hello with a tentative smile. For a moment, I thought about the years we'd spent trading complaints about sprinklers and noisy neighbors. Simple troubles that now felt insignificant. I remembered the early days with Rebecca before the empire, before the fights. How she had stormed into Murphy's diner years ago, challenging unfair hiring practices with fire in her voice. That moment of defiance had drawn me in, made me believe in her fierce spirit. I had fallen in love with the woman who refused to settle for less. But love wasn't always enough. As I sat there, the reality settled in. This inheritance was more than money. It was a chance for redemption, a test of character, and a call to action. The next morning, I reached out to David Reynolds, the lawyer, to ask about what lay ahead. He was patient and reassuring, outlining the steps for transferring ownership, attending board meetings, and understanding corporate governance. The road would be long, but not impossible. I also received a call from a woman named Susan, Rebecca's longtime assistant. She spoke warmly, describing Rebecca's meticulous nature and the care she had taken to protect the company's future. Susan offered to guide me through the company's operations and introduced me to a few key staff members. With every conversation, I felt the distance between the life I had lived and the one I was about to step into. But the hardest part remained facing David. Our next meeting was tense. He refused to accept the will, accusing me of manipulation and fraud. I tried to explain, to remind him of his mother's letter, but his anger was impenetrable. "Dad, Tana," he said one day, voice low but fierce. "This isn't just about money. It's about loyalty. You walked away from us. You don't get to come back and claim what's hers, what's mine." His words pierced me. I had been absent, yes. Not out of cruelty, but out of feeling lost and inadequate beside a woman I loved but couldn't keep up with. "I'm here now," I said quietly. "Not to take, but to honor her wishes. To do right by her legacy and by you." He shook his head, eyes flashing. "We'll see about that." That night I sat alone, rereading Rebecca's letter. Her faith in me was a fragile light in the darkness. She had seen something worth saving in me, a strength built on patience, integrity, and quiet service. I knew this was my chance, not just to claim an inheritance, but to rebuild a family fractured by pride and misunderstanding. And so, with the spring breeze whispering through the trees, I made a promise to myself, to Rebecca's memory, and to the sun I still hoped to reach, that I would rise to this challenge no matter how steep the climb. The days that followed felt like walking through a storm without an umbrella. Every call, every meeting with lawyers and company executives, every moment spent trying to understand the world Rebecca had built, reminded me of how far removed I was from the life I'd suddenly inherited. But the hardest storm was the one I faced at home with David. He was relentless, a force of nature fueled by years of resentment. Our conversations, once tentative and hopeful, now exploded into shouting matches that shook the walls of my apartment. "You think you can just walk into my mother's world and take it all?" David yelled one evening, slamming his fist on the kitchen table. "I'm not taking anything that's not hers to give." I replied, voice calm, despite the anger rising in my chest. She made her choice. I'm honoring it. His eyes burned with disbelief. Honoring it. You abandoned us. You weren't there when she needed you. You left us to struggle alone. The truth stung. I had left, yes, but not because I wanted to. I was drowning in a marriage I couldn't save, a man outpaced by the woman he loved. I didn't walk away from you, I said quietly. I was lost. But I'm here now, and I want to help. Not just with the company, but with us. David scoffed. Help? The only help I need is what I deserve, and that's everything. The bitterness in his voice echoed years of pain I hadn't fully acknowledged. One night, as the snow began to fall outside, I found myself sitting alone, replaying every memory, the laughter, the fights, the silence. Rebecca's letter lay open on the table, her words a beacon in the dark. She had trusted me. She believed in the man I was, beneath the mistakes. I realized then that this inheritance was more than money. It was a chance to rebuild, to prove that love, forgiveness, and character could overcome even the deepest wounds. The next morning, I called David Reynolds, the lawyer, and asked for a meeting with David. We sat across from each other in a small conference room, the tension palpable. I want to understand, David said after a long silence. Why did Mom choose you? After everything, I looked into his eyes, searching for the sun. I remembered a boy full of hope and wonder. She saw something in me that I forgot to see in myself, I said softly. She believed in second chances, and she believed in you. David's expression softened, the walls around his anger beginning to crack. For the first time in years, we talked not as adversaries, but as father and son trying to find common ground. It wasn't easy. There were tears, confessions, and moments of doubt, but slowly, a fragile bridge began to form between us. Rebecca's legacy was more than a business or a fortune. It was the opportunity for healing. And as the spring sun warmed the streets of Cheyenne, I knew our journey was just beginning. If you're still watching, comment 1, so I know you're still with me. The moment I stepped into the towering glass doors of Flores Consulting Solutions, a wave of unfamiliarity crashed over me. The sleek offices, the hum of conversations in hushed tones, the relentless pace, it was nothing like the world I'd known. My life had been one of steady routines and quiet satisfaction. But this was a different universe, one where decisions were made in milliseconds and millions changed hands with a keystroke. I was the new chairman of the board, the man Rebecca had entrusted with her legacy. And yet I felt like an imposter. The receptionists barely glanced my way. The executives greeted me with polite nods, their eyes reflecting a mix of curiosity and skepticism. How did a power plant worker from a small Wyoming town earn their respect? Susan, Rebecca's longtime assistant, was my first ally. With her sharp mind and steady demeanor, she became my anchor in this sea of unfamiliarity. "What's him?" "Miller," she said. On my first day leading me through the labyrinthine hallways, Rebecca built this company from nothing. You're inheriting her dream, and it's now your responsibility to carry it forward. I swallowed hard. Responsibility. A word that felt heavier than any I'd encountered. Our first board meeting was a blur of jargon and projections. Terms like market share, investment portfolio, and corporate restructuring floated over my head. I listened, taking notes, trying to piece together the puzzle Rebecca had crafted with such care. David was there, sitting rigidly beside me. His presence was both a comfort and a challenge. We shared the burden of legacy, yet the space between us was filled with unspoken accusations and old wounds. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into learning. Days were spent poring over financial statements, attending strategy sessions, and meeting with department heads. Nights were often long and lonely, filled with self-doubt and questions. Had I been out of place all these years? Could I rise to the challenge Rebecca had set for me? Susan remained patient, explaining the complexities of the business, introducing me to key players, and translating corporate speak into language I could grasp. One afternoon, she handed me a thick binder of Rebecca's notes and letters. Her vision was clear, Susan said softly. She wanted the company to be more than just profits. She wanted it to make a difference. Her words struck a chord. Rebecca's ambition had never been solely about wealth. It was about legacy, building something that mattered. Meanwhile, David and I were navigating the rocky terrain of our relationship. He was cautious, still hurt, but slowly willing to open the door. One evening, after a particularly grueling day, we sat on my porch watching the sunset paint the sky with shades of orange and purple. "Dad," he began hesitantly, "I don't know if I can forgive you yet, but I want to try." I felt a lump rise in my throat. After years of silence and anger, these words were a bridge across the gulf that separated us. I nodded, my voice thick with emotion. "That's all I can ask for, David." Over time, we started working together, more sharing insights and learning from one another. His knowledge of the company was deep, and despite our differences, I saw the passion that drove him. We debated strategies, brainstormed solutions, and made tough decisions. Sometimes we disagreed fiercely, but always with a shared goal to honor Rebecca's legacy. In quieter moments, we talked about life beyond business, memories of Rebecca, our hopes for the future, and the family we wanted to rebuild. I realized that the inheritance was more than money or power. It was a chance to heal old wounds, to rebuild trust, and to find strength in forgiveness. Spring blossomed fully in Cheyenne. The cherry trees outside my apartment burst into bloom, a reminder that even after the harshest winter's renewal was possible. And so was hope. The first few months at Flores Consulting Solutions were a whirlwind of meetings, introductions, and unexpected challenges. Every day I found myself learning new terms, wrestling with financial reports, and trying to keep pace with a business world that moved faster than anything I'd known. But more than the numbers and strategies, the hardest part was rebuilding the fragile bridge between me and David. David was brilliant. There was no denying that. He knew the ins and outs of the company, the personalities, the stakes. But beneath his sharp exterior was a wounded son who carried years of hurt and bitterness. Every conversation with him was a delicate dance. One wrong step could send us back to days filled with silence and resentment. One evening, after a long day of board discussions, David surprised me by inviting me to dinner. It wasn't a grand gesture. Just two men sharing a meal at a modest diner downtown. The air was thick with unspoken words. "Dad," he began stirring his coffee, "I want you to know this isn't easy for me. Seeing you here in this role, it's hard to accept." I nodded slowly, the weight of his words settling in. I guess I always thought I was the one who should carry Mom's legacy. I worked for this company, lived the life she wanted for me. He looked up, eyes searching mine. But maybe I've been so focused on what I thought was right, I forgot to see the bigger picture. His vulnerability was new and unexpected. "I want to believe we can find a way forward," he said quietly. That moment marked a turning point. We began to share more than just business plans. We talked about Rebecca, about family, about mistakes and hopes. It wasn't easy. There were still days when old wounds reopened, when anger and frustration bubbled to the surface. But slowly, respect grew alongside understanding. Meanwhile, I dived deeper into the company's operations. With Susan's guidance and David's insights, I learned about contracts, client relationships, and the vision Rebecca had for growth. The employees, too, started to see me not just as the outsider or the man who inherited the fortune, but as someone willing to listen and learn. One afternoon,